Today's lesson is on using the distributive property. When we say distributive property, I want you to think about breaking apart numbers, taking the hammer to break apart the numbers. So, important to take down a definition. The distributive property is the process of breaking apart a problem into two simpler problems. So what you've seen here is the example was 3 times 21. We took our hammer and broke apart the 21 into the factor 21 into two simpler parts, a 20 plus a 1. We know that anytime we have a number that ends in 0, it's easier to do any kind of math operation. So what we do is when we use the distributive property, we're talking about parentheses. So we have the two simpler problems are the 3 times is the constant in both sets of parentheses, 3 times and 3 times. And what we've done is taken 3 times 20, moving this 20 over here, and then 3 times 1, bringing this 1 over here. We know that 3 times 20, we can do that mentally, is 60. 3 times 1, of course, using the identity property, is 3. So what we know is adding 60 and 3, we get a sum of 63. 3 times 21 turned into a simpler problem. 3 times 20 plus 3 times 1 equals 63. Let's do another couple of practice problems. So this is 59 times 8. There's no way that I could do that in my head the way it is. So what I could do is break it into two quantities with a plus sign between the two quantities. What's going to remain constant in both quantities is the times 8. I put those in both quantities. What I'm going to do is take my hammer and break apart 59. Like I said, it's always easier to have a factor with a 0. So that would be a 50 with a 9. So in this quantity, I'm going to put the 50, and in the second quantity, I'm going to put the 9. So to go ahead and do the steps, 50 times 8, I can do that mentally. I know that 8 times 5, my basic fact is 40, and add the second 0 because it's a 50. I'm adding that. I know 9 times 8, I know my basic multiplication facts, that's a 72. So what I have here is 59 times 8 is 400 plus 72, or the sum of 472. I do that same process with 107 times 6. Again, I know automatically to put two sets of parentheses with a plus sign in between. My constant is going to be times 6 times 6. And what I'm going to do is take my hammer, break apart the 107 into a 100 and a 7. I really could break it into anything. I could break it into 102 plus 5. I could break it into 90 plus 17. But I love these nice round numbers. And so that I'm trying to make it easier on myself. So if I had 100 here in that quantity, and over here is a 7, we know 6 times 100 is 600, plus 7 times 2 from my basic facts is 42. So my answer is 642. When you think about it, we've been doing this last year when we learned how to multiply using partial products. As you know, the quickest way to an answer is often to use the algorithm or the formula. So in this example, we would go 7 times 4 is 28. We put the 8 there and bring up the 2 into the tens column because it's 28. And then we go 7 times 2, which really is 7 times 20, but 7 times 2 is 14, plus 2 more is 16. So the product of 24 times 7 is 168. But in multiplication, before we taught you that algorithm, we taught you the partial product way to do this. And what we would do here is, I think I'll move my screen recording sign. You would have said here, first you would have gone 7 times 4. 7 ones times 4 ones is 28. And then in my next step, I would have gone 7 times, this 2 is not really just a 2, but a 20. Again, knowing how I can multiply multiples of 10, I know that answer to be 140. And I would have then added and had a total product of 168, which agrees with the same answer I got much more quickly using the algorithm. When we used partial product, that was another way of using, this really is the distributive property. That's what we just showed you by breaking, in this case, we had broken the 24 into a 20 and a 4. So the distributive property may seem somewhat familiar to you. Again, this is another way, I've written it out more nicely, showing you that that is the same way we were doing distributive property. 140 and 28 is 168. So I hope this lesson gives you a better idea about the distributive property used in multiplication. Thank you. The end.